If you're at the point in your business where you're considering getting some support from a coach or a mentor, stay tuned. I will be talking all about the best time to access coaching and mentoring so that you get the most out of your investment. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help health, life and spiritual coaches get more clients so they can generate more income and live their most aligned life. And today on the show we're talking all about the best time to start working with a coach or a mentor if you want to grow your business. So I think this is a really fascinating topic to get into because there's the easy blanket answer to that question is it's always a good time to get coached. It's always a good time to get support. But I think there's some nuances in that. And I've really been noticing that in my work and thinking back to some of the experiences that I've had when I've worked with a coach and a mentor myself. So I think the first thing that we need to do is to get clear for ourselves, like what it is that we want to get out of working with someone. And I think this is a really good question to ask yourself, and what any kind of coach or mentor should be asking you in a discovery call kind of process is, what is it that you want to get out of this relationship? What outcomes do you want to achieve? And usually if you've looked at like the sales page that a coach might have for their work, you'll get a sense of what it is that they can help you with. But having a really clear sense of what it is that you want to achieve, I think is really key. And that can help kind of guide you as you decide on whether or not it's the right time or not. So having that really clear identification of like, what is it that you want to get out of that relationship? And also being realistic. Often coaching and mentoring packages are high ticket because you're getting that one-to-one direct time with that person, and obviously the outcomes that they would expect to get and support you to get. But also I think it's really important to be realistic. Just because something's a high ticket investment doesn't mean that it's going to be like a ridiculously crazy kind of outcome that you're going to get. And I'll talk a little bit about realistic outcomes and things shortly. But actually just being in that relationship and in that space where you are being supported, there's a lot of value simply in that as well. So I think just getting really clear on like what would be the bare minimum outcomes you would want to get from a relationship with working with a coach and that investment, and just being really clear on that before you start to decide is this actually the right time to get support on this particular thing. Another thing that you might want to consider here is whether or not you want to work with someone who does more coaching or someone who does more mentoring. There are some subtle differences. I will put a link to the episode of the show where I talked about the differences between coaching and mentoring, so do check that out. That explains it in a bit more detail, so then you can decide, is there a particular kind of style that I want someone to be embodying when I'm working with them? Most people tend to go between both. Like I definitely, jump around on that spectrum of coaching and mentoring. So it's really about just understanding that difference and then knowing which you will most benefit from, basically. So now just to get into some specific scenarios where I think people would really benefit from working with a business coach or a mentor. And the first one is that you've identified that you're at a transition point in your business. And that is, for me, there's some really key transition points that I see with my clients and the people that I work with. So it's the very, very beginning. So it's literally you've done your coaching certification and at the very, very start. And usually that is that initial setup process. People can sometimes really benefit from support then when it comes to things like developing their coaching packages, making sure that they've got all of the necessary things set up and created, that the freebie is actually really strategic and makes sense and all that kind of stuff. I think at that stage is a really interesting one to get some support around. And then I think you've got the stage after that where you've got your website set up and you've got your main coaching package and things like that. And it's like, okay, now I'm out in the world, I need to get clients. How do I do that? What happens now? I think that's a really interesting transition point as well. And that's primarily where I work with people inside Wholehearted Business, my 6-month group program. And then I think the next transition point after that is, I suppose there's a few different ones. I think you can plateau, which is something that I'm going to talk about soon. There's also that transition point where you are actually getting one-to-one clients and stuff is working, like you're starting to see results, but you want to start shifting into a slightly different business model. So I think there's this like the shifting into a slightly different business model, which is often like scaling and creating courses. Again, I'm going to drill down into some of these things soon. There's also things like pivoting your brand, I think is a really great time to get some support. If you're going to pivot your brand, kind of change what it is that you're about, that's a really good one. And just any kind of shift. To me, those are like the 3 key transition points that I see in most of my clients. So the very, very start, where you just kind of need that support to set things up right from the beginning. The point where you've got your website and you've got stuff set up, but you need to go out and get clients. And then after that, it's those various different transition points around, okay, so what happens next? My business is working. Do I stay where I am? Is that sustainable? What do I want my business and life to look like? That's kind of point as well. Which actually nicely brings me on to the next point, when I think people would benefit from working with a coach or a mentor, and that is if you are not sure on what your next step should be. Sometimes it can just, you've done certain things, you're kind of doing the things that are generally like best practice in online business, but you just feel like you don't know what the next step is. And I think working with someone who can either coach you through deciding that, or can give you mentoring advice and support from their own experience and their experience of working with people, that can be really beneficial to help you decide, okay, so actually this is what the next step needs to be in order to get me to where I want to go. So that can be a really great time to work with a coach or mentor as well. Maybe you just need some reassurance. I think this is a really important one. And actually, when I think about when I've benefited from working with coaches and mentors, it's been often at points in my business when I've just needed some reassurance. I've just needed someone to say, actually, Laura, like, you're doing really well. This is all making sense. Maybe tweak this or maybe do this differently, but actually people are getting it. It's fine. Like, sometimes I've just needed that reassurance, and actually that can be a really valuable point in your business to get that, depending on who you are, what your personality type's like, and, how you show up. But sometimes just having reassurance can be so helpful, and working with a mentor at that point can be really, really beneficial. If you're feeling overwhelmed, that can also be a good time to work with a coach or a mentor. Often, but particularly if you are knee deep in overwhelm, just doing more courses or just doing more things that aren't actually going to individually give you the next steps and the advice and guidance that you need, that can be a really great time to work with a coach or a mentor, because they should be able to help you cut through all of the stuff, kind of find a way through the fog and actually get really focused on what your next step should be, so that you don't feel that overwhelmed, and so that you can actually take action. And it might be that you don't necessarily need to work with a coach or a mentor over a long period of time to get through that particular phase. It might be that you just need a one-off call or a couple of smaller calls. I offer one-off calls in my business. I've got various different types of one-off sessions and support, but because sometimes people just need a call, and often recently for me, that's one of my favourite ways to access support. Is actually, I don't necessarily need ongoing stuff. I'm at the point in my business where I just need to have that conversation with someone, get some advice, create a plan, and then go off and implement it, which is another thing that I'm going to talk about in a second. Another great time to work with a coach or mentor is if you are feeling stuck, or perhaps that you've hit a plateau. So that might be an income plateau, it might be the number of clients that you get in plateau, it might be that you're just feeling a bit bored and a bit kind of uninspired in your business. That can be a good time to work with a coach or mentor to support you to, find new fun things to do, new ways to bust through that plateau and to get to another level. That can be a really great time to get some support to help you negotiate that particular phase of business, because I think we all kind of have peaks and troughs and certainly plateaus in business, and actually getting someone else's input to help you get through that can be really useful. And related to that, maybe you just want to get to the next level. Perhaps things have been kind of consistently going okay, but you know that there's another step that you want to take in your business. You're just not sure how to do that. Maybe it's an income related thing, or maybe it's kind of a business setup, or how often you work and how much time you're putting into your business that you want to shift. That can be a great time to work with a coach or mentor. I primarily work with people around this kind of thing in my one-to-one mentoring, where often what we're looking at is, how can we kind of shift things up a notch and start doing things differently? And that's not always about income. Sometimes that's more about work-life balance and time and impact as well as income. But that's a really great time to work with a coach or a mentor as well. Perhaps you just want to do something new. So often clients work with me when they want to create a course for the first time, when they want to do some kind of retreat or some kind of live event, basically doing something that's new to them that they've never done before. And obviously, you don't know what you don't know. And this is where coaching and mentoring, I think, is so valuable. Like, yes, you can learn certain things from a course, but actually having someone there alongside you, supporting you to do something new can be a much more time effective and efficient way of working actually than you struggling along on your own for ages and actually never really getting it done. And I mean, another thing to mention obviously with coaching and mentoring, another element of that is the accountability that comes with it and the support that you get from that aspect as well. So you can do all the courses in the world and you might not take the same action that you take when you work with a coach or a mentor. So that can be really helpful as well if you want to do something new. Perhaps it just feels like the right time. Sometimes I think we just get that internal nudge and it's like, actually, now is the right time. I need to work with someone. Or perhaps you just come across someone and you're like, actually, I really want to work with that person. I just have this connection with them and I feel like they're the person that I need to work with. And I'm a big fan of following those internal nudges if they feel really good and follow them and see where you end up basically. And I think that's a great way to make decisions sometimes. Like, it's not the most logical way, but sometimes like our bodies and our senses know what we need. So sometimes we just come across someone and it's like, actually, now's the right time. I need to work with this person. And that's awesome too. Another element that comes into this that I feel is quite important is that certainly when it comes to your business is that you have the time to actually do the work in your business alongside that coaching and mentoring relationship. Now, there's never such a thing as a perfect time. I think that's really important to recognise. There's always going to be something that's not quite perfect. There's never going to be that ideal, like perfect expanse of free time to do things. I mean, for some people there might be, but for most people that just doesn't exist. However, I think you do want to have some kind of realistic amount of time that you can use. And I mean, part of this I think comes down to understanding the differences between planning and developing ideas and getting strategies and stuff set up and then implementation on an ongoing basis. But I think for this, it is really about knowing that you've got some time. So what I have started offering all of my clients, because I think this is quite an important value to me and being human being centered in our businesses, and is offering people pauses or breaks in their work with me. Now, obviously that can have a knock-on impact because if you create momentum over time, then that can be a problem if you have a pause. But I also believe if your life suddenly crumbles, I'm not expecting you to continue working with me and getting the most out of our work together if you have a major bereavement or if you have like a major life event or something major happens. So I'm really happy that I get to offer that to my clients, both my one-to-one clients and people in Wholehearted Business. They can take a pause if they feel like either they just want to do some implementation or they have like a massive life event and something happens. I just think that's a really important value for me, and I'm really happy that I can offer that to my clients. So I think on the flip side of that, it is about knowing that yes, there's no perfect time, but alongside that, you do want to feel that you do have the time and space to make the most of what it is that you are signing up for, because I do think that is going to help you get the most out of that investment. So basically, there's a lot of times when it would be really beneficial to work with a coach or a mentor. As long as you know what it is that you're going for and it's the right person, I think you can get fantastic results at any time in business. But I do think there are, like on the flip side, a few times when it's probably not a good idea to work with someone. So I've given you lots of examples, lots of scenarios of when I think it is a particularly good time to work with someone. But on the flip side of that, I think it's a bad time if you are coming at it from a place of severe lack. So severe lack to me is like your financial safety is in jeopardy, like you're in a real place of lack. You know, you're in that real kind of like crisis mode. I don't necessarily think that's the best time to work with someone. I don't think you're going to get great results. I think you need to create some financial safety for yourself before you invest in a relationship that is going to help you hopefully create more financial safety and more financial abundance. But I don't think that that's a good idea to do that when you're in that crisis mode. I also don't think it's a good idea to work with anyone at any time if their way of getting you to work with them is around prodding your shame, your feelings of not enoughness, your lack, your FOMO. Like, I think those are all not emotions that we want to be using as triggers for deciding to work with someone or deciding to work with someone at that time, especially in high ticket stuff. Like, I do have, you know, various little tools and things in my business that I use that do utilize urgency, and I feel really good about using them. I think it gives people a container to make a decision. But with high ticket stuff, I don't tend to use it. And also, if I do use it in high ticket stuff, there's a 2-week cooling off period, so people can always have a bit more time to decide if they have actually made the right decision. But I think that anything that comes from that place of lack, of not feeling good enough, that's not a good time to invest in something, because if you're in that place energetically, I just don't think that's useful. I also think as well, it's important to recognise that it's okay if you are in more of an implementation phase. I think in business, it's quite common that we will find ourselves in phases where actually you know what it is that you need to do. You just need to get on and do it. And I mean, to be fair, if you are feeling stuck and you're not doing it, then working with a coach in that situation around accountability can be really helpful. But otherwise, if you are okay with getting on, cracking on and just implementing something for a while, then that's fine as well. And perhaps that's not the best time to work with someone if you are self-motivated and if you're actually getting it done and it's more about, I just need to do this and implement it and then kind of see what results I get before I work with someone. And that's absolutely fine as well. Also, I think another important thing to recognise is that there's different forms of support are going to suit you as an individual better. So I did an episode of the show all about this. I'm going to link to that, where we talk about the different ways that you can be supported in your business, whether that's one-to-one, within a group program kind of setting, through self-study stuff, and just talk about some of the pros and cons of those different ways of being supported. And I think actually understanding that is really useful as well when you make a decision, because at different points in your business you might need a different form of support. And then finally, I think another thing to think about with coaching and mentoring is to know that the return on investment is not always just the period of time that you're working with someone. What I've massively found in my business when I've worked with people is that the return on investment or the benefits of working with someone as a coach and a mentor is not just the time that we work together. It's not just a 6-month program. It's not just the 4 weeks or whatever. It often comes much further down the line, the ultimate return on investment, because again, we're in this place as a society and as a culture is that it's has to be instant results and instant everything has to be right now, everything has to be quick, everything has to be overnight. That's just not realistic for most people. So actually I think it's really helpful to understand that your return on investment with coaching and mentoring might actually be a longer term thing, and that's actually okay. So that's just another thought for you guys today. To wrap up, we've talked a little bit about identifying what your goals are for working with someone, what you need. We've talked about a few specific scenarios when I think it's a particularly good time to work with a coach or a mentor in your business. We've talked about a couple of scenarios when it's not a good time to work with a coach or a mentor. And we've talked about some of the little nuances there in terms of, thinking about your return on investment of working with someone and knowing the best form of support for you. So I'd love to know if you found this helpful. I really hope that it's given you some ideas to think about. And obviously I offer lots of support for coaches who are growing their businesses. If you resonated with any of those particular scenarios that I mentioned, coaching and mentoring could be a fantastic option for you to help you move through whatever that scenario was that I mentioned that you recognise for yourself. So do check out all of the services that I offer. I will leave links in the description so that you can go and check those out if you're interested in learning more. Please do leave a comment, DM me on Instagram. I'm at Wholeheartedly Laura, or pop me an email. That's absolutely fine. I'm really happy to be helpful. And also a final reminder is that I will be taking a 2-week break from the show over summer solstice. So there'll be a 2-week break. I try and have these 2-week breaks of the show, one at summer solstice, one at winter solstice, and it just gives me a little bit of breathing space basically. So that's coming up soon. But I hope you guys are doing so well. As always, please give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment. That would be amazing. Please subscribe as well if you're new to the channel. Thank you so much if you've enjoyed this episode. Please do share it with anyone else who you know that are also in the coaching space. I really hope that everything that I share on the show is really valuable and useful. So yeah, do let me know how you get on with this episode. Take care. Bye.